Salt. It's on pretty much every dinner table, and it's in almost everything we eat. But this simple ingredient is at the heart of a huge global health challenge. So let's dive in and really unpack the story behind sodium. Okay, right off the bat, here is the core of the problem. Globally, the average adult is consuming 4,310 milligrams of sodium every single day. Now compare that to what the World Health Organization recommends, less than 2,000 milligrams. We're eating more than double the healthy limit. Let that sink in, more than double.
And that massive overconsumption, well, it has some absolutely staggering consequences. We're talking about an estimated 1.89 million deaths each year that are directly linked to eating too much sodium. That is not a small number. It's a global crisis, and it's hiding in plain sight.
So let's dig into that idea. This really is a salty global problem. We're going to take a look at how this became such a widespread, yet often invisible health crisis that's woven into the food we eat every day. Now, let's be super clear about something. Sodium itself isn't the villain here. It's actually an essential nutrient. Our bodies need it to do things like transmit nerve impulses and just keep our cells working the way they should. The real issue isn't sodium itself, but the sheer quantity that we're all consuming. So, what are those dangers exactly? Why is eating too much salt such a silent threat? Well, let's break down the specific risks. The biggest one, the health effect that's most well known, is raised blood pressure. And once your blood pressure is high, it dramatically increases your risk for major cardiovascular diseases, things like heart attacks and strokes. But the risk doesn't even stop there. Too much sodium is also linked to a higher risk of gastric cancer, kidney disease. It's a really serious list. Okay, so if we're all eating way too much, where is it all coming from? This brings us to a really interesting part, where all this sodium is actually hiding. And I'll give you a hint. It's probably not where you think it is. Really, think about it. If someone asked you where most of the salt in your diet comes from, what would you say? Most people immediately point to the salt shaker on the dinner table, but you'd be surprised. And here's the big reveal. A huge chunk of the sodium we consume comes from processed foods. We're talking about everyday things like breads, processed meats, and all kinds of snack foods. Condiments like soy sauce and fish sauce are also loaded with it. It's the salt that's already in our food before we even bring it home. All right, the problem is obviously huge, but here's the good news. There are solutions. So let's look at the Global Action Plan and see how countries and major health organizations are starting to fight back against this salty tide. And from a purely economic perspective, tackling this is a complete no-brainer. The WHO says reducing sodium is one of the most cost-effective things we can do for public health. Get this, for every single dollar invested in these programs, countries see a return of at least $12. That is just a massive return on investment. So what do these smart investments actually look like? Well, the WHO calls them their 4 best buys. First up, work with the food industry to reformulate their products, to just contain less salt. Second, create environments in public places like schools and hospitals that make lower sodium options the easy choice. Third, put clear, easy-to-read labels on the front of packages. And fourth, launch big media campaigns to make sure everyone knows what's at stake. Now, these global policies are absolutely crucial, but what can you do right now, today? Let's bring it all down to the personal level and talk about some simple steps you can take. If you remember one thing from all this, let it be this visual. The WHO recommends keeping your total salt intake under 5 grams per day. And to help you picture that, it's about 1 single teaspoon. And remember, that teaspoon has to account for all the salt that's already hidden in your food too. So how do you actually stick to that 1 teaspoon limit? Well, it's simpler than you might think. Try to focus on eating fresh, minimally processed foods. Get creative with herbs and spices for flavor instead of just reaching for the salt. And, of course, limit those processed foods and sauces. And, this is a big one, get in the habit of actually reading the nutrition labels. In speaking of labels, here's a super helpful tip. They usually list sodium, not salt. So this little converter is your secret weapon. Just remember that the daily goal, 2,000 milligrams of sodium, is the same as that 5-gram, 1 teaspoon limit for salt. It's a simple tool that makes you a much smarter shopper. So we'll leave you with this question. After everything we've uncovered about this hidden crisis, the power is now in your hands every single time you go to the grocery store.
The next time you pick up a can or a box, what will you look for on that food label?